Hi there, thanks for being with us. I'm Seher Zama. Of course, we're making a start, keeping a focus on the budget session. Ahead of it, President Pranab Mukherjee already having addressed the joint session of Parliament there. And he spelled out the achievements so far, of course, hailing the government's various schemes that were initiated last year. Also called it the dawn of a new era. He specifically mentioned demonetization as a surgical strike on the black money market, a thrust for One India, One Poll there being made by him as well. The President termed the budget session as historic, the highlights of which, of course, also mentioning how demonetization in the long run would be helping the poor, fighting terror, fighting black money, and also the various housing schemes that have been announced by the Prime Minister, all working for the good of the poor.
With the objective of digitization of all the live Kishan credit cards, another 3 crore cards will be converted into RuPay debt cards shown. The corpus of NABARD fund has been doubled to rupees 41,000 crore to ensure easy credit access to insurers. Financial inclusion is key to poverty alleviation. An unprecedented 26 crore plus Jan Dhan accounts have been opened for the unbanked. Over 20 crore RuPay debit cards have been issued to enable cashless payments. Moving swiftly, the Jan Dhan, the Jan Suraksha, close to 13 crore poor have been covered under various social security schemes. The work of skill development that was earlier spread across 21 ministries and 50 departments has been brought under one umbrella ministry. The Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana has been launched with a budget outlay of rupees 12,000 crore to train 1 crore youth over the next 4 years. The passing of black money, undisclosed foreign income and assets, and imposition of Tax Act 2015, Benami Transactions Prohibition Amendment Act 2016, amendments to treaties with Singapore, Cyprus and Mauritius to prevent misuse of provisions in such treaties for tax evasion and movement of black money in India, and the Taxation Amendment Act providing for Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana have together resulted in a comprehensive policy-backed initiative.
Main question in India today is the creation of jobs for our young people. सबसे बड़ा सवाल हिंदुस्तान में आज युवाओं को रोजगार दिलवाने का है और इस मामले में सरकार एकदम फेल है. The government is a complete failure on job creation. That's my main point. Thank you. Neha, what are you doing? Come.
Breaking inputs here, massive setback to the Indian IT industry. The H-1B visa bill that has been introduced in America. We're looking at how this is going to play out for our tech team, our IT experts, our IT industry here. We're looking at a huge setback here, the bill which is being introduced in America. Remember, Donald Trump all along, America first being his policy, and what this means here for H-1B visa that is being introduced in America will be passed on that. We're in fact going to switch focus, is of course being breaking inputs on those developments taking place at the Congress in America. But back here, we are expecting the economic survey there to be tabled by our finance minister ahead of the budget session. Finance Minister, of course, on the first day marking the budget session after President Pranab Mukherjee's speech there, the joint address to both houses of parliament. The economic survey in just a short while from now is going to be tabled by the finance minister. But the highlights of what President Pranab Mukherjee has addressed in this joint session of parliament here, of course, hailing each of those government's various schemes and how the government in the past year has worked for the poor. Let's get in our senior editor, Madhav, getting us further inputs here on this. Also, our studio guest, independent voice, Mr. Sanjeev Ahluwalia, coming in on this as well. Before that, a word that's coming in from the government, Union Minister Javadekar. Let's take a listen.
जिस तरह से सरकार ये इसका खत्म होने दो। मोदी जी का बहुत ही प्रेरणादायी भाषण था और जिसमें गांव, गरीब, किसान, जवान, नौजवान, दलित, शोषित, पीड़ित, वंचित और कुल मिला के गरीब कल्याण वर्ष में गरीबों के लिए और समाज के सारे शोषित वंचित वर्गों के लिए क्या क्या किया, मजदूर, किसान, इनके लिए क्या क्या काम किए, इसका पूरा वर्णन आया है। और जिस तरह से इस वर्ष में काम हुए हैं, इसका एक तरह से लेखा जोखा उन्होंने दिया है। ये बहुत ही आज देश को एक आनंद देने वाला भाषण था और मार्गदर्शन देने वाला भाषण था। और प्रधानमंत्री राष्ट्रपति जी के भाषण में जो विमुद्रीकरण की बात, विमुद्रीकरण का बड़ा फैसला हुआ और जो अपनी सेनाओं ने पराक्रम करके जिस तरह से वो सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक किए, इसकी भी बात आई। और डिजिटल पेमेंट के बारे में जिस तरह से देश ने गति पकड़ी है और स्वच्छता से लेकर हर चीज में जो जन आंदोलन में तब्दील हुआ है, ये सब विषय सामने आए और आर्थिक स्थिति का भी एक जायजा और उसके साथ साथ इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर विकास में, संसाधन विकास में क्या किया है, ये भी सामने आया है। मुझे लगता है ये बेहद महत्वपूर्ण है। टुडे the speech by Honorable President was inspirational because it was thematic in a way that it centered around what the government has done for the poor, downtrodden, scheduled caste.
Of course, fully in support of what has been stated there by the President. Our senior editor, Madhav, getting us further inputs here, essentially listing out all the achievements, Madhav, there of the government in the past year. More specifically, prominently, of course, hailing the move of demonetization, calling it brave in a decision that would certainly work in the favor of the poor in the long run.
Well, absolutely. No doubt of the fact that it is the President's speech where traditionally and customarily he in fact highlights the government's major policy achievements over the course of the past 1 year, and of course demonetization as well as several areas pertaining to the financial sector being in fact the most discussed about. Clearly, of course, he was focused on that primarily, talking not just about the large number of Jan Dhan accounts and also the kind of measures that were taken by the government, the reasons for demonetization and the steps that are being taken by the government to ensure, also thanking people that for their patience in the government, their belief in the government when in fact they had to wait in lines patiently for the past several months as far as demonetization is concerned. Also touching upon various other welfare schemes of the government, for instance the Prime Minister housing scheme, which in fact he said would help the poor greatly in terms of their housing requirements and so on and so forth. But of course the most important aspect that we will have to look out for is in fact the economic survey, which is of course expected to be tabled anytime now.
Right.
About half an hour's recess is of course seen in both houses, in fact are expected to convene any minute now, and of course important documents, not just the economic survey but also 3 important ordinances that are expected to be tabled in both houses today.
Right. Mr. Ahluwalia, of course, we've listed out the highlights of what the President has just mentioned in both houses of parliament here. But the real figures, of course, in terms of growth, in terms of job growth, that, of course, the specifications of that, of course, is going to come in the economic survey. Do you think the Congress has touched the crux of the matter, wherein which you had the Congress Vice President Rahul Gandhi saying, his other senior leadership saying yesterday as well in tabling that State of the Economy report and releasing that to the press, saying that the job growth needs to be addressed. The UPA had brought in 7% job growth. Where is the job growth?
Well, I mean, I think the Congress has done very well politically to, hit at a point where the government is really at its weakest, which is in the hard area of creating jobs for the young. Because, this is the promise that essentially the young who voted for the Prime Minister were looking forward to. And that is where we really have a huge problem. But remember one thing, that the non-creation of jobs is a issue before the entire world. Is not just an issue in India.
Restricted to India, yeah.
The international headwinds are going to probably make this even worse, as we just saw. You were also highlighting that with these H-1B visas going down, and fewer opportunities for people to go abroad, especially to the US, where a lot of our techie jobs came from, or at least part of the techie jobs came from. This problem is going to grow. And associated with that is, that the strategy for employing people is increasingly becoming unclear. With the shadow of artificial intelligence and robotics looming over us. You can see that, HDFC Bank, for instance, is soon going to have a robo right there in 20 of its branches, helping you when you go in.
Okay.
And industry across the board is going for robotics. Now, I hope that the finance minister in the budget tomorrow will have drawn the link between the returns to human capital, which is what jobs are about,
Yes.
and the cost of investment, which is financial capital. You see, the big problem with our economy today is that we provide incentives for you to invest more. But we tax you if you employ a person. We tax you because we tax the employee. We don't tax the machine. We give an incentive on the other hand. And that is why it's far more attractive today for people to, say, replace me with a machine. And that is already happening. A lot of journalists, for instance, are going to lose a job because very routine articles are soon going to be printed out by computers.
All right.
So I think it's not an
much
easy
for us
one.
to fret about, perhaps too, in the long run, of course, in the coming few years there, as you make a mention of that. Madhav, looking at the growth figures there that will be coming in on the economic survey, with respect to what the IMF has already stated, downgrading the Indian economy, the other rating agencies not really making the picture look bright.
Well, of course, in fact, the government too has come out and openly said, the RBI itself has come out and said that, in fact, they expect the GDP to be hit. The perception, of course, where the difference only lies, is about how much this impact will be. Now, opposition parties as the Congress, we've even seen former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh come out and say that it could be hit as much as 2 percentage points, whereas, in fact, the government says about half a percentage point to about 1. Various other agencies are somewhere in the middle. So the big question is not just in terms of how much the GDP will be hit, but also various other aspects, like for instance rural demand, like for instance how much in fact the penetration really of these online transactions has taken place, and how much impact that would have had in terms of tax collections, so on and so forth. The impact of demonetization in several areas that really our experts and others could perhaps throw more light on, in terms of what the economic survey could perhaps throw light on. So that's something that we will have to watch out for. Of course, all political parties having very different perspectives, because this budget session perhaps has been politicized like no other budget session ever in the past, given the fact that 5 states and big states are headed to the polls.
Absolutely. Mr. Ahluwalia, let's establish on why it's different this time. Economic surveys that we get every given year annually on how the economy is done in the past year. What makes it different this time, of course, is what has been completely off at a tangent, being the demonetization drive, which is why it makes it different this time.
Which is what makes it vital this time. Because I think this is probably the first time in a long series of years that the economic survey will be read. Because, usually it's sort of tabled right before the budget. And unfortunately, over the years, it's grown to a document which spans something like 600 pages,
Okay.
I mean, do you have the time to read 600 pages? Most people don't. So I think that this year, this is a document, and it's unfortunate that they're not printing more copies of it, because it's so very difficult to read 800 pages, on the computer. But this year, this is going to be a very marketable book.
Okay.
Because everybody is looking to the government to say, okay, what is the definitive data on the economy, number one? but also what is the definitive program for, achieving all the promises that were laid down in 2014-15, because we're at the midpoint of this government's tenure. So this is going to be an extremely very well-read book.
Okay.
And I certainly do look forward to reading a few pages of it.
Okay,
Not all
apart from
800.
really piquing the interest for all people across the board, really, for having personally gone through the demonetization drive and lived through its ups and downs and the highlights and the drawbacks of it. Let's in fact touch upon the GST rollout as well, something that the government has been struggling for, not taking place at the initial dateline there that was expected perhaps in the next quarter now. The losses that the government has faced, would it show in figures, or would this just be a political loss?
Well, it's not clear that with what loss we are likely to suffer, because you see, the problem is that the efficiency of the GST, I mean, the GST is being brought in for two reasons, I guess. One, there is it's an efficient way to tax, because you can get credit from before. The other subset of that is that, there'll be a thrust towards becoming more digital. It will also avoid people from dealing in unaccounted for money. There's an incentive now to come clean, and that's a very good incentive. The problem with the GST is that I think it becomes efficient, and no less a person than Dr. Kelkar, for instance, has recently said a few days ago that the GST should be a single number tax, whatever it may be, 12%, 15%, 18%. Do not go into this 16 rates or 6 rate slab that is currently, because that really cuts back on the efficiency of the process.
Yes.
And if the efficiency gains are lost, right, all those, the boost to the GDP that people had earlier calculated, whatever it may be, 1%, 1.5%, that is going to be probably diluted. So I think that needs to be avoided. So already, even on the path that we are, as usual, we're going for a very incremental type of a reform, that we will first bring in a GST with a number of rates, and then maybe over time, through discussion, we'll narrow it down, hopefully, to 2 or 3 rates.
Right.
The second thing is the rate itself. If it's going to be a very high rate, then you have the problem that whilst you may be garnering more revenues, and this is really a problem of the state governments, you also have to look at the inflationary impact of the GST itself.
Which is why so many state governments really haven't managed to come on board there for bringing about that rollback of the GST. Let's also try to put this in perspective in your reading of why the President has stated this, in hailing this as the dawn of a new era.
Well, the President is reading out a speech written by the government. I doubt very much that the President of India has the latitude to write his own words into the speech. So I think the President...
No, but let's also understand the aspects of which one needs to read into it. I mean, we're looking at the dawn of a new era in what terms here?
Well, admittedly, I mean, but let's be, so he's reading, the government thinks that it is the dawn of a new era, and frankly, so do I, because for the simple reason that, we are going into probably an era, if you can, though, the opposition would be very worried if you say dawn of a new era, because it's kind of an endless thing. So which means that the BJP will carry on in power beyond 2019. And possibly that's what, and admittedly, that's what the BJP wants. But I think digitization and the government's thrust on digitization will impact the black economy. It has already impacted the black economy. And therefore, we are now joining the ranks of those countries, which do business cleanly, smartly, and with higher efficiency. So I think that is what they mean by a new era.
Okay.
But just my guess.
That's your guess. Of course, wanting to read out what is really meant by it, and each of the highlights that have been read by President there in both houses, in Central Hall in Parliament there. Prime Minister Modi had also, in fact, made a statement before the start of the President's speech there, saying we're looking at a lot of firsts here. It's the first time that you have the budget being announced on the 1st of Feb. It's the first time that you have a joint announcement of both the railway and the union budget. How does that impact us?
Well, I think it shows you that the process is becoming more efficient. To be honest, the railways have long stopped being a major mover of the economy, and there was no reason why Parliament should waste an entire process over passing the railway budget separately.
Okay.
And so this is a part of the making the government institutions more efficient and working better. So I think that is probably what the president meant.
All right.
So we should applaud the government for that. No
Okay,
doubt about it.
reconnected with my senior editor Madhav as well. Also introducing our guest this noon with us, Pranjal Sharma, who's of course consulting editor for the Business World. Thanks for being with us, Pranjal. In your view, big takeaways here from the president's speech.
Well, I think there is very clear focus on the economy, and I think the president is also highlighting that, and also the fact that the entire narrative around growth and development is back in focus. You know, there were several incidents happened in the country over the last few months which made people feel that the government is losing focus. But I think that's completely in the center of the government's focus. This budget is really also going to focus on what the president referred to on some of the deprived parts of the country, and that effort is continuing. It has been there for the last few years, but I don't think the government taking the eye off the ball on this one.
Right. Madhav, as Pranjal they were stating there as well, reaching out to the rural areas here, announcements of course that have come in for the poor as far as demonetization once again being argued as something that's going to be working in favor of the poor. Housing schemes, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana once again for the poor. But the rural economy, the thrust on once again revitalizing the rural economy after the demonetization. That focus being there as well this time.
Well, yes, well, if you remember, one of the early jives, after this government came into power was Sood Boot Ki Sarkar by the opposition. Ever since that, a lot that the government has been doing to change that particular perception that it was insensitive about the poor. We have seen the government, in fact, trying to reach out to various sections, even changing the entire social sort of equations that normally determined the voting patterns of various sections and various political parties. Demonetization, too, has that particular aspect to it. And, of course, the government wanting to send out an image that it is very sensitive to the requirements of the poor, is doing its best to really try and alleviate poverty and ease really the living conditions of the poorest of the poor in this particular country. That's clearly a focus area, and that's why perhaps the president's speech was very largely focused on this one particular aspect. So clearly, of course, these are important considerations and important aspects as far as the policy of the government is concerned. At this point of time, in fact, we're joined by Mr. Narendra as well, who's with us. He's a spokesperson of the BJP as well. You've seen the president's address, sir. Yes. It was largely focused on, the rural areas, the focus really of the government on how it is reaching out to the poor. All of this is not just important politically, given the fact that state elections are coming, but also the government's entire attempt to reach out to various sections of society and expand the entire social...
Very quickly, take